Anyone up for a husband swap? Mine comes with a snore and a broken lawnmower. That's what she said. Right in the middle of dinner. Forks froze midair. Glasses paused halfway to mouths. A few nervous laughs broke through. Her best friend Marla let out a full cackle, slapping the table like it was the best line she'd heard all year. But me? I didn't laugh. I didn't even flinch. I set my wine down, dabbed my mouth with the cloth napkin like we were at a funeral instead of a backyard dinner, and looked her dead in the eye. That's fine, I said, calm as a judge. I've already drafted the paperwork for my replacement. You could hear the wind shift. Just like that, the entire evening choked on silence. Jenna's smile faltered, twitching at the corners like it wasn't sure if this was still funny. Her mouth opened, probably to toss out some deflective quip, but I didn't give her the satisfaction. I stood up, adjusted the sleeves of my shirt like I was straightening a tux, and walked inside. Not a slammed door, not a shouted insult, just steps measured and final. I didn't come back out. I'm sure they stayed a while longer. Awkward conversation, clinking forks, maybe a, he's just being dramatic. That's her favorite word. Dramatic. Said it when I brought up how she talks to me in public. Said it when I mentioned she hadn't touched me in 7 months. Said it when I caught her texting her ex at 2 a.m. and she claimed it was about his sick dog. But that night, I wasn't dramatic. I was done. The truth is, I'd been waiting for the moment she'd show her hand in front of witnesses. Give me the social permission to walk away clean. People forget public cruelty is its own kind of consent. You make someone the butt of the joke long enough, eventually they stop playing along. The next morning, I was gone. Now, if you're listening to this and you're one of the 97% who hasn't hit that subscribe button yet, do me a favor and tap it. Not because I need the numbers, but because stories like this, they only get told when folks like you help keep the team alive behind the scenes. We put our soul into these stories, for people who've lived them or barely survived them. Back to Jenna. She never saw the silence as a warning. She saw it as a win. She thought she could joke about our marriage like it was some late-night sitcom punchline. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, is that while they laughed over grilled chicken and sangria, I had already been quietly dissolving everything beneath her feet. Retirement accounts? Split 3 months ago. Cabin in Vermont? Sold. Proceeds moved into a trust under my sister's name. Mail redirected. Office resignation pre-signed. Effective that Friday. I even cashed in the life insurance policy she didn't know I adjusted, converted to an annuity, no death payout. And the best part? The replacement she joked about? There wasn't one. Not a woman, not a person. Just peace. A new life already in motion. An existence without applause for bad performances. I wasn't chasing someone new. I was escaping someone stale. It wasn't the joke that broke me. It was that it was rehearsed, practiced. She'd said variations of it before, to different audiences, different smirking friends, always followed by her self-satisfied laugh and my forced grin. But this time it landed. Because I let it. Because I needed it to. She gave me an exit. I took it. Later that night, after the guests left and the dishes were still crusted with salmon skin and aioli, she went upstairs and found the closet half empty. Passport gone. My grandfather's watch box missing. The charger to my work laptop coiled neatly, like a little goodbye wave. And on the kitchen counter, just beneath the bowl of unused lemons and the expired basil oil she always said she'd try, sat a thin folder. One word, private. Inside was a signed separation notice. A clean breakdown of assets. A notarized letter explaining I wasn't coming back. The final page? Sticky note. You can keep the punchline. No name. No signature. Just silence. And silence was the only part of me she'd never rehearsed for. She got home before midnight. Her hair still smelled like wine and smoke from the citronella candles. And her heels clacked through the empty hallway like they didn't recognize the place. She called out, half joking. David? You pouting somewhere? No answer. The house wasn't dark, but it felt hollow. Like something essential had been pulled out of it. Like the soul of the place had packed a suitcase and slipped out while no one was watching. She walked upstairs, expecting maybe to find him asleep, sulking, headphones on, a passive-aggressive playlist blaring something sad and self-important. But the bedroom door was wide open, and the moment she stepped inside, her stomach dropped. Half the closet was gone. Not messy, not ransacked, just gone. His suits, his favorite hiking boots, that old university hoodie he never let her toss. A perfect, clean line where his things used to be. Like someone had measured what mattered and took exactly that, no more, no less. The nightstand drawer? Empty. The watch she gave him for their 10th anniversary? Gone. Passport, laptop, the battered copy of Dune he reread every summer, missing. Her first instinct wasn't heartbreak. It was annoyance. Seriously? Over a joke? She muttered, "You're being ridiculous." As if saying it aloud would summon him from behind the shower curtain or crouched by the bed like some moody teenager. But there was no sulking man waiting to be forgiven. Just silence. And on the kitchen counter, a folder. Not buried. Not hidden. Front and center like a spotlight had been aimed at it. Simple label, private. She almost didn't open it. For a full minute, she stood there, arms crossed, as if ignoring it would rewind the night. As if she could unjoke her way out of what had just detonated. But curiosity always beat her conscience. She peeled it open. The first page. A signed separation notice. Neatly formatted. No dramatic accusations. Just dates, legal references, and a blue ink signature that hadn't trembled one bit. His handwriting looked like he'd been planning this for weeks, maybe months. The second page. A spreadsheet-like list of assets. Color-coded. Columns labeled, transferred, divested, and, chillingly, reassigned. Bank accounts closed. Cabin in the Adirondacks? Sold to an LLC named after his mother's maiden name. Car lease transferred. The joint account? Already drained. Her portion transferred in full, with a detailed receipt paperclipped like a final act of generosity. Then came the letter. Not handwritten. Typed. Formal. Cool. It stated that everything had been arranged. No legal battle necessary. He wasn't contesting the house. He wasn't interested in spousal support. He didn't want anything. Just detachment. And at the very bottom, one line, centered, bold. You can keep the punchline. That's when her legs gave out a little. She sat down hard on the edge of the kitchen stool, letter in one hand, the other still holding her clutch like she'd just come in from some charity gala instead of the social assassination she'd unknowingly walked into. It wasn't just that he'd left. It was how much care he'd taken in doing it. There were no typos in the documents. The letterhead was embossed. Every transaction had a timestamp. Even the language, cold, distant, painfully articulate, was surgical. This wasn't revenge. This wasn't a man storming out after an emotional outburst. This was a man vanishing on purpose. And the worst part? She didn't know when it started. Was it last month, when he stopped joining her friends for drinks? Was it the way he'd stopped correcting her in public when she twisted his words? Was it the quiet he'd started wrapping himself in like armor? Her mind raced, trying to pinpoint the moment he became a stranger living in her house. Calculating, watching, quietly folding the edges of his life until it could fit in a carry-on. She picked up her phone and called him. Straight to voicemail. Again. On the fourth try, the voicemail message cut in, and for the first time, she noticed he'd changed it. No more "Hi. This is David. Leave a message." Now it just said, "You've reached a number that no longer accepts messages." Then click. She stared at the screen, numb. The world outside hadn't changed. Crickets still sang. Distant traffic still hummed. But inside this house, inside her chest, something ruptured. Not loud. Not violent. Just final. By morning, she was dialing his number like a reflex. No coffee. No shower. Just wild hair and a cracked voice whispering, Come on, pick up." But every call went the same way. Straight to that new, flat voicemail message. "You've reached a number that no longer accepts messages." No warmth. No hint of him. Just mechanical dismissal. She tried texting. Rapid fire. Sentences spiraling from indignant to pitiful. "Very funny, David. You proved your point. Can you come home now? We need to talk. I'm serious. Please. Where are you? Delivered. Read. Never." She sat there in the kitchen, staring at her phone like it owed her an explanation. Then she called his office. A woman picked up, chirpy, polite. The kind that says, "Just one moment," like she's guarding a fortress. "Hi. I'm looking for David Lewis." Pause. He's clacking. "Oh, Mr. Lewis resigned. 2 weeks ago, actually. Can I redirect you to our client services team?" Jenna blinked. No, I'm his wife." Another pause. More cautious this time. "I'm sorry. I didn't know. He didn't leave a forwarding number. But I can give you HR's email if you're trying to reach out about." "I said I'm his wife." Silence. Then a robotic, Let me see if someone from management is available. Click. Hold music. She hung up. Resigned? 2 weeks ago? She checked the calendar. That would have been before the dinner. Before her joke. Before the final shove. He was already halfway out the door. She drove to the cabin next. The one they'd poured so much into, their escape. Their someday retirement project. 2.5 hours upstate, where the lake still froze solid in winter and cell signal died in the trees. She figured if he wasn't home, maybe he was there, hiding, cooling off, playing some passive-aggressive retreat game. But when she pulled up the gravel drive, something was off. The wind chime was missing. The potted geraniums she'd left on the porch last month were gone. The cabin looked vacant. She stepped out of the car and knocked. No answer. Circled around to the back. Peeked in the window. The place was stripped. Not trashed, emptied. Rugs rolled. Frames gone from the walls. Firewood been cleaned out. Not even a kettle on the stove. She climbed back into her car and dug through old emails, trying to find the name of the contractor they'd once used. Found it. Dialed. "Oh, Jenna," the guy said. "Yeah, your husband mentioned you'd be calling eventually." "What?" "For the closing walkthrough. Sale finalization." She gripped the steering wheel like it might snap in her hands. "The what?" "The sale," he repeated, slower. "He closed on it last week. Got a great offer. Said it was time to move on." The blood drained from her hands. She didn't remember the drive back. Just the buzzing, her brain a hornet's nest of static. David had sold the cabin. Without her. Without a word. Which meant, legally, it hadn't been joint ownership anymore. He must have moved the deed months ago. Set it up so cleanly, so quietly, that when the final documents slid across someone's desk, there wasn't even a blip. When she got home, she didn't cry. She booted up her laptop and started searching for their lawyer's number. Not the messy, fight-in-court kind. The estate planner. The one who helped with their prenup, their wills, the long-term stuff. The boring but dangerous kind of lawyer, the one who knows things. Receptionist answers. "David's wife," she says again. A tone of urgency, of disbelief. He gets on after a minute. "Jenna," he says, cautious, calculating. "I need to know what's happening. Did he contact you?" A pause. "Yes," he says carefully. "He retained me 6 weeks ago. I assumed you knew." "You what? What did he do?" "Well, I'm limited in what I can disclose." The lawyer hedges, which only makes her want to throw the laptop. "But I can confirm he requested asset reassignment, separation paperwork, and power of attorney transfers where applicable." Applicable to what? His personal holdings, travel provisions, healthcare directives. He also requested notarized filings for out-of-state relocation. She interrupts, voice sharp. "Did he say where?" "No," the lawyer says. "Only that it was time to untangle unnecessary attachments." His words. Unnecessary attachments. She stared at the screen long after the call ended. Emails, photos, spreadsheets swirled like ghosts. She'd been thinking he left in a storm of emotion, fueled by humiliation or pride. But she was wrong. This wasn't an escape. It was an operation. And she wasn't the victim of it. She was its objective. It started with a tag. 3 weeks after David vanished, Jenna got a notification during a sleepless scroll through social media at 2:12 a.m. Her thumb hovered over it. A mutual friend, Tasha, the kind who never missed a chance to name-drop or post from some overpriced brunch, had tagged her in a photo with no caption. Just, "Incredible panel tonight. Big moves being made." Jenna tapped it open. The photo loaded slowly, like the universe was savoring the blow. A dimly lit ballroom, cream tablecloths, rows of gold-rimmed glasses and plated hors d'oeuvres. A sleek, modern banner behind the panel. Legacy Horizons Summit, National Real Estate, and Private Equity Forum. And in the center of it was David. Jenna froze. He looked like a man on a magazine cover. Navy suit, crisp white shirt, no tie, elegant but unbothered. His hair was trimmed tighter than he ever wore it with her. And he had that lean, rested look of someone who'd started sleeping again. Deep sleeping. The kind where no one yells from the next room about a leaking faucet or unbalanced energy. He wasn't just attending. He was speaking, one of 6 at the head table. His name was on the event banner behind him. David Lewis, partner, Juno Ridge Capital. Partner? She'd never even heard the name before. David was an analyst. Middle management. Spreadsheet wizard with just enough charm to get through client dinners. Partner? She zoomed in. No ring. That detail hit harder than the title. Not because she believed in the symbolism, hell, she'd taken hers off during a petty fight 2 years ago and never put it back on. But because he had always worn his. At weddings. At cookouts. During house repairs, even when she said it would get scratched. He said it grounded him. Said it mattered. And now gone. But what hit hardest wasn't even the missing ring. It was her. A woman. Younger by at least 10 years. Honey brown hair in soft waves. A sleeveless navy dress that probably cost more than Jenna's entire purse collection. She wasn't clinging to him, no performative PDA, just standing beside him in that way only women confident in their place do. Not fighting for space. Already part of the picture. Jenna stared at the image like it was an optical illusion she just couldn't decode. David didn't look awkward or uncomfortable. He didn't look like someone trying on a new life to see how it fit. He looked like a man who'd been living that life for months. And the longer she looked, the more it unraveled. The summit was in Denver. Denver. 3 time zones away. She did a quick mental check. Had he ever mentioned Denver? No, not once. She would have remembered. It wasn't a city he'd liked. Too dry, he used to say. Too many pretentious cyclists. She opened a new tab and looked up Juno Ridge Capital. Private equity, real estate development, venture capital, high-rise builds. Offices in 6 cities. New partners announced last quarter. And there it was again. His name. His face. A professionally taken headshot. Jaw slightly turned. That faint, unreadable half-smile she used to think was sexy and now found absolutely infuriating. Below it, David Lewis, partner, asset strategy and portfolio development. Formerly with Grayson Analytics, David brings 20-plus years of structured finance expertise and an acumen for quiet acquisition. Quiet acquisition. She almost laughed. Quiet was right. The dread didn't land in one blow. It bled in, like waking up mid-surgery. You can't scream. You just feel everything. She looked at the younger woman again, studying the angle of her arm, the proximity, the shared laugh caught in another photo 2 slides down. This wasn't a rebound. This was a replacement. And Jenna, who once called David safe, dull, the guy who alphabetized the spice rack, realized she'd underestimated the depth of his calculation. He didn't just get over her. He got beyond her. She tried to rationalize it. He must have met her after. He must have rushed into this. But the dates didn't lie. The timestamps on the social media posts, the summit press release dated over a month ago, the blog entry from a financial writer praising David's breakout presentation from 2 weeks before he walked out. He didn't leap into this life. He stepped into it. Deliberately, strategically, silently. The pieces clicked together, each one colder than the last. She hadn't been left. She'd been replaced. By someone who didn't tell husband swap jokes at dinner parties. By someone who didn't mock him for falling asleep during documentaries. By someone who probably applauded instead of performing. And in that moment, Jenna didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just sat on her perfectly coordinated sofa, in the house he gave her, with the counters he installed and the floors they picked out together, and realized she wasn't the center of anyone's story anymore. Not even her own. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, one of those bland, gray mornings where nothing stands out until something does. Plain envelope but certified. That quiet, ominous kind of envelope that doesn't scream trouble, but sits with it. She opened it at the kitchen table, one hand clutching her second coffee, the other tearing through the seal with mounting dread. Inside, a legal packet clipped together, thicker than a phone book contract, stamped and initialed on almost every page. The top sheet was innocuous enough. Title transfer confirmation, residential property. The address was hers. Their house. The one they'd bought together 10 years ago. Fought over backsplash tile. Chose the paint in 3 shades of warm gray that all looked the same but cost different amounts. Her name, only her name, was now on the deed. For about 3 seconds, she felt something flicker. Relief, validation, as if this was a peace offering, a sign that David wasn't trying to burn everything down. Maybe he'd had a change of heart. Maybe this was the olive branch. Until she got to page 3. The words lien transfer hit her like a slap, followed by municipal repair obligations, backdated tax penalties, and the particularly brutal phrase full financial responsibility assumed by sole deed holder. Her hands began to sweat. She flipped through the pages, contractor estimates stapled to one section, city inspector reports attached to another, foundation cracks, drainage issues, electrical updates mandated by a code change last year that they'd ignored. Even the chimney, a charming little feature she'd loved when they bought the place, had a flagged hazard notice from 2 years ago. Each page bled numbers. 5,000 here, 11,000 there, 42 grand in cumulative estimates and pending permits. A project manager's note scribbled in the margin. Timeline, 3 to 6 months. Occupancy disruption likely. And all of it, legally hers now. David had removed himself from the picture with surgical precision. No liabilities, no shared burdens, no obligations. Just a tidy signature transferring full control and every festering, expensive problem into her lap. She read it again and again, hoping she'd miss something. A clause. A shared clause. Some trace of his name lingering on the dotted lines. Nothing. Even the legal footnotes were clear. He'd consulted with a property attorney, filed the documents through the county, paid the transfer fees, and because the equity had technically been split post-separation, she'd received it free and clear. Free and clear. Except it wasn't free, and it sure as hell wasn't clear. She called the number listed on the form. Some guy named Ed who apparently handled the title work. Hi. Yes, this is Jenna Lewis. Oh, hey, yeah. Everything processed fine on our end. Congrats on the transfer. Yeah, about that. I didn't request this. Well, technically, your former co-owner did. And since he's relinquishing claim and it's within the structure of the existing joint deed, you don't need to sign anything to receive full title. You're just the owner now. She felt like screaming. But what about the liens? The repairs? There's thousands. It cleared his throat. Yeah, I did see those docs in the file. Unfortunately, as title holder, you're now liable. You can contest some of the fees, but most of it's baked in from prior inspections. His release form covered indemnity. Indemnity? She spat. Yeah, he's legally covered. Walked away clean. She didn't remember hanging up. Didn't remember knocking over her mug and watching coffee pool beneath the stack of pages, turning line items into wet, smudged reminders of her failure. He gave her the house, and along with it the rot under the floors, the mold behind the drywall, the gutter system that hadn't drained right since 2018, the city fines they'd both agreed to deal with later, the water heater replacement, the cracked driveway, every someday job, now her job. Jenna felt rage bloom in her chest, sharp and rising, like a swallowed blade. He'd made it look like a gift, and she'd accepted it, because pride wouldn't let her see the trap until the jaws locked around her. Her lawyer, a sleepy, overpriced man she'd used for parking tickets and one failed attempt to trademark a blog, took a look at the packet 2 days later. He adjusted his glasses, sighed, and said, I mean, it's legal. It's brilliant, honestly. He didn't take anything. He just left you with everything. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just sat there, watching as her lawyer flipped pages and occasionally muttered phrases like, damn clever, and cleanest exit I've seen in years. She realized something then. David hadn't left to escape. He'd left to unburden. And she wasn't carrying the weight of a marriage anymore. She was carrying the ruins of it. Alone. By design. She didn't call him out of strategy. She called him because, for a moment, she forgot everyone else had already picked a side. It was 10:03 p.m. Jenna was curled on the living room floor, surrounded by blueprints and contractor invoices she didn't understand. When she dialed Marcus's number, David's closest college friend, they used to vacation together. Marcus and his wife, Jenna and David. Board games, lake swims, potluck chili that always tasted like regret. Marcus had been in their wedding, had toasted their love with bourbon and inappropriate jokes. He had to understand. When he picked up, his voice was tired. Not irritated, just resigned. Hey, she said, her voice brittle. It's Jenna. Pause. Then, I figured this day would come. Marcus. I need to talk to someone who actually knows him. Another pause. Then, you mean the version of him you remember? Or the one you ignored? Her breath caught. What? He warned you, Marcus said. For years. You kept performing. He stopped clapping. That one landed. Deep. I didn't think it was that serious. That's the problem, Jenna. You never thought it was serious. Everything was a performance to you. The dinners, the jabs, the eye rolls in front of friends. You thought it was charming. David was just enduring it. She tried to speak, but he kept going. He came to visit me last winter. Alone. Said he couldn't breathe around you anymore. Said it wasn't hate. Wasn't even anger. It was grief. Jenna's chest tightened. He grieved you before he left, Marcus said, gentler now. He didn't run away. He mourned you, quietly, and then moved on. The line went dead. She didn't call back. A week later, she got her invitation. Well, not exactly hers. It was a forwarded email from a mutual acquaintance. A glossy e-vite for the Chandler Foundation charity auction, benefiting clean water projects. Venue, the Imperial Hall downtown. Dress code, black tie optional. Guest list, elite. And there it was again. David Lewis, host committee. She stared at the screen for a long time, not sure whether to scream or laugh. David, hosting charity events. When had that started? She shouldn't have gone. Every neuron told her to stay home. But desperation has a way of dressing itself up as closure. She bought a dress that cost more than she had, borrowed shoes that blistered on contact, and walked into that chandelier-drenched palace like she still belonged to something. The moment she saw him, she knew she didn't. He stood beneath a gilded archway, drink in hand, surrounded by men in tailored suits and women in velvet. His posture was effortless. The same man who used to grunt getting off the couch now glided through conversations like a shark through calm water. And they listened to him. They leaned in. He was mid-laugh when he spotted her. His expression didn't change. No flash of surprise. No scowl. Just a polite blink. Like he'd noticed an interesting painting in a hallway he didn't remember decorating. She stepped forward. Two men in black suits blocked her gently, like a breeze with elbows. "I need to speak to him," she said, low, urgent. They didn't raise their voices, didn't even say no. One leaned in and murmured, "This section's restricted to committee members and their guests. I was his wife." The other security man didn't blink. "Understood, ma'am. But this area is closed." "Ma'am." That word felt like a slap. She looked past them. David was already facing the other way again, deep in conversation, smiling at something a woman said. Tall, dark hair, elegant posture, clearly part of this world. Jenna didn't recognize her. Of course she didn't. She turned and walked toward the open bar, cheeks burning. Every laugh behind her felt aimed at her back. Every clink of glass a judgment. She ordered a drink she couldn't pronounce and pretended to study the artwork like it wasn't unraveling her from the inside. She'd come for sympathy. She found a locked door. Worse than that, she wasn't denied entry. She was unrecognized. David hadn't banished her from his new life. He'd simply built it with no space for her to exist in it. It came at 12:41 a.m. She was awake, of course she was. Sleep had become a negotiation her body kept losing. The night stretched longer now, thick with what-ifs and dead-end Google searches for terms like reverse deed transfer and retrospective spousal rights. Her phone screen was the only light left in the room, casting sharp shadows across unopened bills and contractor bids that kept multiplying like mildew. She was reading a blog about personal reinvention at midlife, something desperate, soaked in platitudes, when the notification slid down from the top of her screen. Unknown number. Offer still stands. Let me know if you want to swap. First, she blinked, confused. The kind of blink that comes when your brain tries to protect you by pretending you misunderstood. Then her blood turned to ice. She read it again. Offer still stands. Let me know if you want to swap. Her hands trembled. Not dramatically, no soap opera shivering. Just small, involuntary twitches as her body processed the magnitude of what she was seeing. She knew that tone. That cold mockery. The message didn't need a name. It was him, David. It was a scalpel dressed as a text. He'd waited until her pride eroded. Until she was hollowed out and scouring scraps of memory for proof she hadn't always been cruel. Until she was low enough to hope for a response. Any response. And now this, a callback to the moment that detonated everything. The dinner, the snark. Her glass raised in laughter while he died a little behind the eyes. Anyone up for a husband swap? And now here it was again. But this time, the joke wasn't aimed at the dinner table. It was aimed at her. The worst part wasn't the message. It was what came after. She blinked once, twice, and watched in real time as the number disappeared. Literally vanished from her phone. The thread dissolved into nothingness like it had never existed. No contact card. No trail. No option to block. Just digital ether where something once pierced. She searched her phone settings like a madwoman. Tried reverse lookup apps. Typed the phrase into Google like some breadcrumb would lead her back to a place where she could scream at him, "How dare you?" But the silence roared louder than any confrontation could have. She didn't even get the satisfaction of replying. And for a moment, a brief, flickering moment, she considered laughing. Because that was the only move she'd ever known. Turn it into a bit. Turn pain into performance. Get the room back on your side. But there was no audience now. No Marla to clap beside her. No Tasha to giggle and refill her glass. Just the woman who had everything she used to mock. Stillness, power, control, and traded it away for applause that never really mattered. She stood up, the phone still in her hand, and walked to the mirror in the hallway. The same mirror where she used to practice her "I'm just teasing" face. The one that made her feel sharp, witty, in control. Now, the reflection was something else. A woman who had thrown dynamite for laughs, and didn't notice when the fuse started burning toward her. She whispered aloud to no one, "It wasn't even a good joke." Her voice cracked, not from sadness, from truth. The real cruelty wasn't what David texted. It was that it landed. Because for the first time, she couldn't hide behind the illusion of being the one with the upper hand. She had nothing to swap. He already had. It was thicker than regular mail. Heavy, deliberate. The kind of envelope that whispers importance before you even open it. Embossed. Ivory. Tied with a single, black silk ribbon, no return address. Just her name, elegantly printed. Jenna. Not Jenna Lewis. Just Jenna. She held it like it might bite. For a full minute, she debated whether to tear it or toss it. Curiosity won, as it always had. Inside was a formal card, the kind that smelled faintly of wax and power. Gold foil text. Letterpress raised like old money's fingerprints. Legacy Partners founding dinner. Venue Ridgeline Hall. Dress code, formal. One seat reserved. No explanation. No contact number. No RSVP option. Just one name in small type at the bottom. David Lewis, founding partner. Her first reaction was confusion. Then disbelief. Then something else. Hope clawed its way up before she could stop it. Maybe this was the olive branch. Peace offering. Maybe he was done punishing her. Done playing ghost in tailored suits and texted gut punches. Maybe he wanted her to see the life he built not as revenge, but as proof that they could somehow meet as equals again. After all, he invited her. He didn't have to. She stared at that name, David Lewis, founding partner, for a long time. Legacy Partners. That name hadn't come from nowhere. He used to mutter it in his sleep when they were younger. Pipe dream, he called it once. Legacy Partners. Real estate meets clean equity. Actual ethics in capital. I'll build it before I turn 50. And now he had. Ridgeline Hall wasn't just a venue. It was the venue. A place you didn't book. You earned. Glass ceilings, marble floors, waiting staff trained in 3 languages. The kind of place that charges you for oxygen and makes you say thank you. She had nothing to wear. She wore something anyway. The dress was the same black column she'd worn to an old client's wedding. Timeless, slightly too tight now, but clean. She did her hair the way David used to like it, twisted up with a few soft strands down. She hated herself for remembering, but she still remembered. As she stepped out of the car that night, Ridgeline Hall glowed like it knew who belonged. The valet barely made eye contact as he took her keys. Every guest gliding past her wore silk like skin. She felt underdressed by their posture alone. Inside, the walls were lined with photographs of skyscrapers and ribbon cuttings. Projects she didn't recognize. David's projects, probably. Each image a stepping stone she'd never seen him take. She followed the usher's gesture to the banquet room. A sea of tables shimmered with crystal, silver, and practiced laughter. She scanned the place cards. Not Jenna Lewis. Not even J. Lewis. Her nameplate read simply, guest observer, like a footnote to someone else's moment. She stood frozen. 1,000 watts of conversation hummed around her. And yet the chair might as well have been roped off. She wasn't part of the table. She was an assignment, a spectator to someone else's narrative arc. There was no welcome speech, no toast in her direction. Not a single person asked who she was. And then she saw him, David, flanked by 2 men in tuxedos, 1 woman in a pearl gown, nodding along as someone introduced him from the stage. He looked comfortable, not just dressed for success, inhabiting it. His gaze swept the room, landed on her. He didn't flinch. No acknowledgement, not even a flicker. She watched as he turned slightly, said something to the man beside him, and the table erupted in quiet, appreciative laughter. No signal to security. No smirk. Just Nothing. She sat. She listened. Plates were served. Speeches made. Slides shown. Projections of expansion. New city partnerships. International growth. David's name appeared again and again on the screen. Each time with a new title: Strategic Director, Vision Lead, Co-founder. She sipped her wine and realized what this really was. This wasn't a gesture of peace. It wasn't closure. It wasn't cruelty either. It was a presentation. An unveiling. He wanted her to see the life he'd built. But not to welcome her into it. Not to gloat. Just to confirm it. To show her what happens when someone stops clapping and walks off stage, and then builds the whole damn theater. The lights dimmed. A hush fell across the banquet hall. Not sudden, not forced. It was the kind of silence that arrives when people want to listen. Not out of obligation, but curiosity, respect, anticipation. She knew that silence. David used to chase it in meetings, practicing his delivery until every beat landed just right. But tonight, he didn't need to rehearse. He owned it. He took the stage with an ease that didn't belong to the man she used to mock for rehearsing elevator pitches in the mirror. No notes. No slides. Just him. In a midnight suit. The Legacy Partners logo glowing behind him, casting a long shadow on the wall that made him look taller than he ever had. He waited until even the last fork had stilled. Then he spoke. "People think change happens all at once," he said, voice steady. "One decision. One bold step. One dramatic moment." The room leaned in. But sometimes, change begins with something small. A phrase. A joke. Her stomach flipped. "A laugh," he continued. "Sometimes the people closest to you show their hand through a laugh. That's when you realize you're not in the same story anymore. You're a prop. A setup. The guy with the punchline tattooed across his back." A soft chuckle rippled through the audience. But David didn't smile. "And when you see that clearly," he said, pausing, "you stop waiting for your cue. You stop clapping for someone else's performance. And you make the trade yourself." Applause. Started light, polite, but grew. Not a standing ovation. Not yet. But real. Earned. Jenna couldn't move. Her fingers dug into the white linen of the tablecloth. Eyes locked on the stage. Jaw clenched so tight she thought she heard her own teeth groan. The man on that platform, this version of David, was so far from the one she thought she left behind. There was no trace of the hesitations, the apologetic shrugs, the half-measured smiles that used to follow every social slight she tossed his way like breadcrumbs. This was a man who'd deleted her from his narrative. Completely. The moderator stepped up with a mic, smiling. "Thank you, David. Before we let you off the hook, we have time for one or two quick questions from the press." A few hands shot up. The moderator pointed. A woman in the second row. Neat glasses, crisp blouse, journalist etched into every feature. "David," she said. "Powerful speech. Just curious, given the theme of personal transformation and risk, was your wife an influence in all this? Is she here tonight?" Jenna's heart stopped. She didn't breathe, didn't blink. The entire room turned toward him. David didn't hesitate. He didn't even blink. "I don't have a wife," he said plainly. Not cold. Not bitter. Just factual. As if stating the weather. The room didn't gasp. No dramatic strings played. But something shifted. A final seal. A line drawn so quietly, so cleanly, that even the air abated. Jenna felt her throat close. Not from rage. From absence. From the terrifying realization that the man she married didn't leave her. He rewrote her out. Her name wasn't on his lips. Her image wasn't in his story. Not even as a footnote. Not as a mistake. Not as a cautionary tale. Just gone. She sat there, motionless. A ghost in a chair marked observer. Watching the man who used to share her pillow now receive congratulatory handshakes and approving nods from men who'd never heard her name. She thought back to the dinner party, the stupid joke. The way she'd raised her glass and made him the punchline. The laughter she clung to like currency. And now, she would have paid every cent she owned to be acknowledged. Even as an ex. Even as a regret. But no one regrets what they don't remember. And David? David didn't remember her. Not publicly. Not socially. Not even legally. The stage was his. The life was his. And she was nothing more than the setup for the line he built an empire on. The banquet ended the way all elegant executions do, quietly. Guests filtered out beneath the glow of wrought iron lamps and valet lights, their laughter softened by the night air and 3 glasses of aged wine. The sidewalk glimmered with the leftover sheen of power and polished shoes. Engines purred as luxury sedans rolled up, one after the other, swallowing their occupants like closing credits. Jenna waited near the column by the fountain. She wasn't sure how long. Her heels hurt and she no longer felt the cold. What she felt was something worse. The pull of desperation wrapped in silk and shame. And then she saw him. David stepped out through the arched doors, jacket folded over his arm, tie loosened just enough to say I've arrived and I'm at ease. A valet sprinted to fetch his car as another man patted him on the back, said something that made them both laugh. Jenna didn't hesitate. Her voice cracked before it reached him. David! He turned, not startled, just acknowledging noise. She stepped into his path, breath shallow. Can we talk? He tilted his head slightly. We're talking. Her throat burned. That joke. At the dinner, I didn't mean it. A long pause. He nodded once. Neither did I. She blinked, confused. Until I did. That landed like glass shattering underfoot. David, her voice broke. I lost everything. Do you understand that? You disappeared and I didn't know how to function. He looked at her, really looked, the way a man does when he's deciding whether or not to open an old door. Then he leaned in, close enough that she caught the scent of cedar and something new. Something not hers. Please, she whispered, almost choking on the word. Tell me, what do I have left? His eyes didn't soften. His voice didn't rise. He just said, a punchline, and the silence that followed it. The valet pulled up then, like a scene rehearsed. A dark car, engine purring, door already open. David nodded once. Not to her, not as a goodbye, just to the moment. And then he stepped into the car. She stood there, helpless as it pulled away. Tail lights slipping down the curve of the street like a curtain falling. He never yelled. He never flinched. He just ended it, flawlessly. And she, Jenna, the woman who once held court at dinners and twisted marriage into sitcom gags, was left alone on a sidewalk, in heels that no longer fit, in a life she never thought would outgrow her. She stayed there long after the last engine faded, staring at the place where his car had been. A laugh echoed down the street, but this time it wasn't hers.